I found out the woman I married used to be engaged to my brother during his best man speech. I know how that sounds. Like a bad joke or the plot of some trashy daytime soap opera. But I lived it. It happened at our wedding reception, a sunny Saturday afternoon in early fall, when the leaves were just starting to turn and the world still felt full of promises we hadn't broken yet. My name's Kyle. I'm 31. I married Emma, the love of my life, or so I thought 2 months ago. The ceremony was beautiful, simple, heartfelt, everything we wanted. With the baby on the way, the whole day felt even more like the beginning of something bigger than ourselves. She cried when she walked down the aisle. I cried when I said my vows. We danced down the steps of the church like we were the only 2 people in the world. And then came the reception. And then came the speech. My older brother, Matt, was my best man. Matt, golden boy, crowd charmer, life of every party. The kind of guy who could stumble into a mess and still land on his feet like it was all part of the plan. I should have known better than to give him a microphone. He started out strong, a couple of cheesy jokes about how I used to eat paste in kindergarten, a sweet story about how he knew Emma was the one when he saw the way I looked at her. People laughed, clinked glasses. I relaxed. And then he said it. I can still hear it, clear as day. When I first met Emma, she was my fiancée, well, almost, but obviously she traded up. He laughed. People laughed too, polite, confused, a little awkward. But I didn't laugh. Emma didn't either. She went stiff beside me, her hand tightening around her champagne glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Matt kept going, oblivious. Guess I was just the warm-up act, huh? But hey, everything worked out. Because now I get to call her family, and Kyle gets to spend the rest of his life with the best thing that ever happened to either of us. The crowd tittered nervously. My mom shot Matt a sharp look from her table, the kind of look that used to stop him mid-sentence when we were kids. But it was too late. The words were out there now, hanging in the air like smoke after a car crash. I sat there, smiling for the cameras, feeling my stomach turn to concrete. I didn't even hear the rest of the speech. I just kept replaying those words in my head. When I first met Emma, she was my fiancée. I didn't know. God help me, I didn't know. Afterward, people came up, clapping me on the back, making jokes they thought were harmless. Hey, guess she's been part of the family longer than we thought. Small world, huh? Man, you must be confident to marry your brother's ex. Each laugh was a hammer hitting a crack in my chest. Emma barely spoke during the reception. Just smiled tightly. Clung to my arm like she thought if she held on hard enough, the night could still be salvaged. I went through the motions, the first dance, the cake cutting, the toasts, but I wasn't there. I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere dark and hollow. And later, after the last sparkler fizzled out and the guests stumbled off into the night, I asked her. Standing in the tiny honeymoon suite, tucks undone, champagne bubbles going flat on the bedside table, I asked the question that was burning a hole in my throat. Were you engaged to Matt? She didn't deny it. Didn't even flinch. Just sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor like it might crack open and swallow her whole. It was years ago, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Before I ever met you again. Before we even became this. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell me? She wrapped her arms around herself like she was trying to stay warm. Because it didn't matter anymore, she said. Because it was over. Because I didn't want it to ruin what we had. But you knew, I said, the words tasting like rust. You knew, and you let me walk into this blind. She didn't answer. Didn't have to. I turned away from her, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it echoing in the cheap hotel wallpaper. And then she said the words that made my blood run cold. And it is yours. I turned back around slowly. What? She pressed a hand over her stomach. The pregnancy. The announcement we'd made 2 weeks before the wedding, the one that had everyone crying happy tears and raising extra glasses in our honor. The baby, she whispered. It's yours, Kyle. I swear. I didn't ask. I hadn't even thought to. Not until that moment. Not until the seed of doubt had been planted so deep that it took root immediately. I stood there, staring at the woman I thought I knew better than anyone in the world, and realized. I didn't know anything at all. The thing about a secret is that once it's out, you can't shove it back in the box. It leaks. It seeps. It infects everything. The morning after the wedding, we sat at a diner, staring at plates of pancakes neither of us touched. Emma's engagement ring, the one I gave her, flashed under the harsh lights every time she shifted her hands nervously. She kept reaching for my hand like she could anchor me back to her. But I was already drifting. already somewhere else, already hearing the whispers. Because Matt's joke had traveled faster than the speed of truth. By the time we made it to the airport for our honeymoon flight, my phone was lighting up. Text after text. Hey man, didn't realize Emma was almost part of the family before the wedding. LOL. So, you cool with everything? Just checking. Bro, you sure about the kid? The last one hit me hardest. Because I hadn't asked that question before Matt's speech. I hadn't doubted for a second that the baby was mine. No? Now the doubt sat in my chest like a second heartbeat. Emma noticed me staring at my phone. Saw the tightening of my jaw. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The flight to Cancun, the honeymoon we were supposed to be basking in, felt longer than any flight of my life. We barely spoke. When we landed, we went through the motions, checked into the resort, accepted the complimentary champagne, smiled at the receptionist like we were just another pair of newlyweds drunk on love and jet lag. But inside, I was unraveling. That night, we sat on the balcony, looking out at the ocean. The breeze was warm. The moon was bright. It should have been perfect. Instead, I asked, "Did you ever love him?" She didn't answer right away, just stared out at the waves. Finally, she said, "I thought I did. Back then. But it wasn't real. Was he the reason you hesitated to marry me?" I asked, because the words were burning holes in my mouth and I couldn't keep them in anymore. Her eyes snapped to mine, wide and wounded. "No. Kyle, God, no. I chose you. I love you." But the problem wasn't the past. It was the silence. The lies by omission. The choice she made to keep me blind instead of trusting me with the truth. Trust doesn't die all at once. It erodes, quiet and steady, until one day you realize the foundation's gone. And you're standing in the ruins. The rest of the honeymoon was a blur. Dinners eaten in silence. Excursions we bailed on. Nights lying side by side without touching. I tried. I swear, I tried. Tried to believe her. Tried to drown the doubts. Tried to hold on to the version of us that existed before Matt's speech detonated our life. But the thing about doubt is, once it's inside you, it doesn't just sit still. It multiplies. It grows teeth. And it starts whispering questions you never thought you'd have to ask. Was she thinking about him when she said yes to me? Was he the one she wanted first? Was the baby, the life we were supposed to build together, even mine? The night before we flew home, I found myself scrolling through old texts from her, reading them like a detective, parsing every "I love you," every "I miss you," every "you're my everything" for cracks I hadn't seen before. I hated myself for it. Hated the man I was becoming. Paranoid. Suspicious. Cold. But how do you trust someone who let you stand at the altar not knowing the whole truth? How do you build a future on ground you didn't realize was already full of sinkholes? When we landed back home, reality hit even harder. My mom hugged me a little too tight, like she could sense something was wrong even if she didn't know what. My dad patted my back like he was consoling me at a funeral. My friends wouldn't meet my eyes. And Matt? Matt acted like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just cracked my life wide open in front of everyone we knew. We had a family barbecue the following weekend to celebrate the newlyweds. My mom insisted, like slapping a party over a wound would stop it from bleeding. Everyone was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, friends. And everywhere I went, I felt the eyes on me. The questions no one was brave enough to ask out loud. I caught snippets of conversation when people thought I wasn't listening. "You think it's really Kyle's kid? Crazy they kept it a secret. Man, that family's gonna have some wild Thanksgivings." Emma held my hand through it all. Smiled when she was supposed to. Laughed at the right moments. Played the part of the blissful new bride like an Oscar was on the line. But me? I couldn't fake it anymore. I saw Matt across the yard, laughing with some friends, beer in hand, easy and golden and completely unbothered. And that's when the anger hit. Hot, sharp, blinding. Because this wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about him. The brother who was supposed to have my back. The brother who could have pulled me aside weeks, months, years ago and said, "Hey, man, maybe you should know." But he didn't. And now? Now there were cracks in every direction. In my marriage. In my family. In my future. And I didn't know if anything could put it all back together again. I waited until most of the family had left the barbecue. Until the kids were passed out on patio chairs and the music was low, and the air had shifted from celebration to cleanup. Matt was in the driveway, talking with our cousin Jeremy, beer in one hand, flip-flops on like he was the chillest man on earth. I walked straight up to him, and for once, I didn't smile. Didn't crack a joke. Didn't pretend I wasn't boiling. Jeremy saw my face and made himself scarce like a man who knew exactly what was coming. Matt turned to me, grinning like nothing had changed between us. "What's up, baby bro? How's married life?" I didn't answer. Just stood there until the grin started to wilt. Then I said it. "You couldn't have told me before the wedding?" His smile vanished completely. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said. "Emma. The speech. Her being your ex-fiancée. You thought that was a good time to break the news." He held up both hands like I was being unreasonable. "Well, okay. It was a joke. I didn't think you'd take it so seriously." "A joke?" I repeated. My voice wasn't loud, just sharp. "You said, in front of 100 people, that my wife was your fiancée. That's not a joke. That's a confession." Matt glanced around, like maybe someone was watching. Then he sighed. "Look, man, it was ancient history. We were kids. It lasted, like, 5 months, and we were both too immature to know what we were doing. Then why hide it?" He blinked. "What? If it didn't mean anything, why didn't either of you tell me? You think I wouldn't have figured it out eventually?" He was quiet for a second. Too quiet. "She asked me not to," he said finally. "When you guys got serious. Said she didn't want to mess up what you had. I felt like I'd been slapped. So you both just decided I didn't deserve the truth?" "It wasn't like that, eh?" "Then what was it like, Matt?" I snapped. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you let me walk down that aisle blind. And you knew. You knew." He looked like he wanted to say something, maybe even apologize. But instead, he did what Matt always does. He deflected. "Come on, man. You're overreacting. You got the girl. You're having a kid. Life's good." And just like that, the air left my lungs. Because I realized something awful in that moment. He didn't get it. He didn't understand that this wasn't about Emma being his ex. It was about trust. About respect. About knowing the people you love won't keep you in the dark just to protect themselves. "I don't even know if the baby's mine," I said, the words falling out before I could stop them. Matt froze. "What?" "People are talking, Matt. Asking questions. You think I haven't wondered?" His jaw clenched. And for once, the charm slipped. "You really think she'd lie about that?" he said. "I think she already did," I said. "Or at least, let me live in a lie." He looked away then, and that silence, that heavy, pointed silence, told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't defending her. He was protecting himself. And that's when it hit me. He still had feelings for her. Maybe not burning, obsessive love, but something. Some old ember that hadn't quite gone cold. And maybe, just maybe. He didn't tell me because a part of him liked watching it unravel. "Do you still love her?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just stared at the ground, then back at me. "No," he said. But I never stopped thinking, if things had gone differently. And just like that, all the pieces clicked into place. The awkward glances. The joke at the wedding. The silence afterward. That was all I needed to hear. I walked away. Didn't punch him. Didn't scream. Just left him standing there in the dark with his beer and his history and the weight of a truth he'd buried until it suited him to dig it back up. Back at the house, Emma was sitting on the edge of the couch, looking like she'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. "I talked to Matt," I said. She stood up. "Did he?" "He said you asked him not to tell me." She nodded slowly. Didn't deny it. And I realized something else. This wasn't about betrayal anymore. This was about patterns. The way they both protected their own comfort instead of protecting us. The way they thought I couldn't handle the truth, so they decided for me. "I want a paternity test," I said. Her eyes filled instantly. Tears. Hurt. Maybe guilt. "Kyle, it's yours. I swear." "I hope it is," I said. But hoping isn't knowing. She covered her mouth with her hand like she'd been slapped. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't accuse. I just said the only thing left to say. "If this baby's mine, I'll be there. Always. But if you want me to fight for this marriage, I need the full truth, not the version that's easier for you." She didn't speak. Didn't beg. She just nodded. And I walked upstairs alone. That night, I didn't dream. Didn't cry. Just stared at the ceiling and listened to the silence between us grow thicker by the hour. 2 weeks. That's how long it took to get the results. 14 days of pretending. Pretending we were still a normal couple. Pretending the walls of our home weren't closing in tighter with every passing second. I still went to work. Still made dinner. Still kissed her forehead before bed. But it was all mechanical. Like muscle memory without meaning. Emma tried in her way. Little things. Folding my laundry. texting me silly memes, leaving notes in my lunchbox like she used to when we first started dating. But I couldn't read them without feeling like I was looking at a stranger's handwriting. Because trust once broken doesn't heal clean. It leaves cracks no apology can fully fill. And I wasn't sure I wanted to fix it anymore. The day the test results came in, I sat in my truck outside the clinic for a long time, just staring at the envelope. White, sealed, heavy as a loaded gun. I thought about not opening it. Thought about tossing it in the passenger seat and driving until the world got quiet enough that it didn't matter anymore. But that's not who I am. I'm not the guy who runs. I'm the guy who stands there, even when it hurts. So I tore it open and read the words that would decide the next chapter of my life. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. I was the father. It should have felt like a victory, like breathing after drowning. But it wasn't about whose child she carried. It was about how she carried our future with lies. Instead, it felt hollow. Because being the father didn't erase the lies. It didn't unsay the speech. Didn't erase the whispers. Didn't fix the fracture between me and the woman who was supposed to be my safe place. I drove home in silence. When I walked in, Emma was waiting, perched on the edge of the couch, clutching a pillow like it could shield her. She looked up at me with wide, anxious eyes. And I nodded. It's mine. Her whole body sagged with relief. She dropped the pillow and crossed the room toward me, arms outstretched like she thought everything was fixed now. But I didn't move. Her arms hovered there for a second, then dropped. I'm so sorry, Kyle, she whispered. I never meant to hurt you. I know, I said. And I did. She didn't set out to hurt me. She just set out to protect herself, and in the process, sacrificed me on the altar of her own fear. I sat down on the arm of the chair, not ready to fully enter the space she was holding open. I need to ask you something, I said. She nodded quickly, almost too quickly. Anything. Why him? I asked. Of all the people in the world, why Matt? She didn't answer right away. She dropped into the chair across from me, chewing the inside of her cheek. Finally, she said, I didn't know who I was back then. He made me feel, wanted, seen, like I was somebody. But it was shallow. It was easy, and it burned out fast. And with me? I asked. She met my eyes, and there was something desperate there. You were different. You didn't love the version of me I showed the world. You loved me. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to. But how could I? How could I ever be sure that I wasn't just the safer bet? The cleaner choice after the wreckage? The second try at happiness she thought would be easier to maintain? I need time, I said finally. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'll do whatever it takes, she whispered. I'll wait. I'll prove it. I didn't make any promises. Because love isn't a light switch you can flip back on after a blackout. It's a fire. And ours was barely an ember now. That night, I slept in the guest room again. Alone. Staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the test result on my chest like a stone. I was going to be a father. That was real. That was permanent. But being a husband? Being her husband? That was a choice I still hadn't made. And for the first time since the wedding, I realized. Maybe the question wasn't just whether I could forgive her. Maybe it was whether I even wanted to anymore. Because sometimes, the right thing for your child isn't the same thing as the right thing for yourself. And sometimes love isn't enough to rebuild what betrayal tore down. Sometimes the only thing left is the choice to walk away anyway. Time is supposed to heal. That's what everyone says. Give it time, Kyle. You'll see things more clearly. You just need to let the anger fade. But the longer I stayed, the worse it got. Because some silences don't soften. They sharpen. Emma tried. God, she tried. She went to counseling. She wrote me long letters. Letters she never even gave me, just tucked into a drawer like prayers she wasn't brave enough to say out loud. She apologized more times than I could count. She never made excuses. Never asked me to forget. Only asked me to try. But the thing they don't tell you about betrayal is that once you see someone in that light, once you realize they're capable of choosing their own comfort over your trust, you can't unsee it. You can't unknow it. Some nights, I lay awake in the guest room, listening to her breathing across the hall, wondering if she was awake too, wondering if she was praying for a miracle neither of us believed in anymore. During the day, we tiptoed around each other like polite ghosts, sometimes fumbling through awkward attempts to patch what we both knew was already broken. Meals were mechanical. Conversations were clinical. We talked about the baby, doctor's appointments, names, nursery colors. We never talked about us. Not the real us. Because that us had died the night Matt opened his mouth. One rainy afternoon, about 6 weeks after the paternity results, I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table. No makeup, hair pulled back, face pale and set. There was a piece of paper in front of her. Her hands were trembling. She didn't look up when I walked in. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about what's best. For you. For the baby. For all of us." I leaned against the counter, waiting. "I know I hurt you," she said. "I know you don't trust me. And I don't want our child growing up in a house full of resentment." She pushed the paper toward me. Divorce papers. Filled out. Signed. All they needed was my signature. No demands. No threats. No custody battles. She was offering me an out. An escape hatch from the wreckage. "I'll move out," she said. "We can figure out a parenting plan. You'll be an amazing father. You don't have to stay married to me to be a good dad." She looked up then, and there were tears in her eyes, but no desperation. No begging. Just grief. Just honesty. I stared at the papers. At the place where my signature would go. And for the first time, the weight in my chest didn't feel like drowning. It felt like choice. Real choice. Not the kind made for you by circumstances or guilt or fear. The kind you carve out for yourself with shaking hands and stubborn hope. I sat down across from her, took a breath that felt like it scraped my ribs on the way out, and said, "I don't hate you, Emma." She blinked fast. "I know, but I can't unlive what happened." She nodded. "I don't want to." We sat there, two people who had loved each other enough to dream of forever and hurt each other enough to know forever wasn't possible anymore. And somewhere in the middle of that silence, I realized, forgiveness isn't always about staying. Sometimes it's about setting both of you free. So I picked up the pen, signed my name, and in that moment, I didn't feel like I was losing. I felt like I was finally winning something I didn't even know I deserved. Peace. Real peace. Not the fragile, desperate kind that comes from clinging to something broken. The kind that comes from letting go. Emma slid the papers into a manila envelope, folded her hands. "You'll be a great dad," she said again, voice breaking. "Better than you ever had growing up. Better than I ever dreamed of." I nodded, because that, at least, I still believed. And it was enough. Enough to get up the next morning. Enough to build a new life. Enough to give my child the love and honesty they deserved, even if the love that made them hadn't survived. Later that night, alone in the guest room, I wrote a letter of my own and tucked it away, saving it for the day she'd be old enough to understand. To my future son or daughter, I told them the truth, not about the betrayal, not about the divorce, but about what mattered. That they were wanted, that they were loved, that they were the beginning of something beautiful, not the end. Because love isn't proven by staying where it hurts. Love is proven by choosing what's right, even when it's hard. Especially then. 6 months later, I stood in a hospital room, holding my daughter for the first time. Yeah, a daughter. 7 pounds, 6 ounces. A head full of dark hair. I still squinted shut against the bright, messy world she'd just landed in. And she was mine. Not because a piece of paper said so. Not because DNA confirmed it. But because the second I felt her tiny heartbeat against my chest, every piece of bitterness, every ounce of betrayal, every broken thing inside me went quiet. She didn't ask for the past. She didn't carry the weight of her mother's mistakes or my brother's cowardice. She was brand new, untouched by all of it. Just life, pure and messy and miraculous. Emma was there too. In the hospital bed, pale and tired but smiling in that soft, watery way you do when life cracks you open and puts something better in the empty spaces. We weren't together anymore, not in the way we had been. But we were something. Co-parents. Friends, maybe. Something built on respect and shared love for a little girl who deserved everything we could possibly give her. When the nurse came in and asked if I wanted to fill out the birth certificate, Emma nodded at me. "You should," she said. So I did. Carefully, deliberately. I gave her my last name. Not because Emma asked. Not because I needed to stamp my claim. Because I wanted her to know, from her very first breath, that she belonged somewhere solid. Somewhere honest. Somewhere safe. Later, after they wheeled Emma and the baby off for some tests, I stepped outside for some air. The city buzzed around me, taxis honking, people shouting into cell phones, the whole messy orchestra of life playing full blast. And for the first time in almost a year, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Emma. Not at Matt. Not even at the version of myself that had loved so blindly. I had learned something the hard way. Life doesn't hand out neat endings. You don't always get the apology you deserve. The family you pictured might never exist the way you dreamed it would. But if you're lucky, you get something better. You get truth. You get freedom. You get the chance to build something real, even if it looks nothing like what you thought you wanted. I saw Matt at Christmas. Briefly. He showed up late, hung back by the bar, didn't make a scene. We shook hands. No words. No fireworks. Just a silent acknowledgement that some things stay broken, not to be repaired, but to remind you why you had to let go. Forgiveness isn't about fixing everything. Sometimes it's just about refusing to let someone else's mistakes chain you to the past. I don't hate him. I don't trust him either. And that's fine. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Emma and I settled into something that worked. Trade-offs and drop-offs. Baby milestones and quiet birthday parties. Text about teething and daycare and first words. We'll never be the love story I thought we were. But we're something better for her. And me? I'm good. Better than good, most days. Not because life got easier, but because I stopped needing it to be. I stopped chasing the version of life that looks good in pictures and started living the one that feels good in my bones. One night, when my daughter was about 3 months old, I held her against my chest while she slept, her tiny fist curled into the fabric of my t-shirt. The world was quiet. No drama. No noise. Just her breathing and my heart beating and the simple, overwhelming truth that despite everything, I had everything I needed. I kissed the top of her soft head and whispered it there, into the wild tangle of her newborn hair. You are my beginning, not my end. And I meant it. Every word.